My full name is Carl. Middle name is Edward Stone, S-T-O-N-E.
Okay, and what can you tell me what is your favorite story of OCS?
Favorite story of OCS? I don't know. I guess it was probably the games we played with the TOCS from time to time. You know, like I think back at Fort Knox, we filled his office completely full of balloons once and pushed his desk against the door, and somebody crawled out the window so that he couldn't get back into his office. So. Did
you do any of that at Fort Eustis when you got there?
No, I don't think we did. When I got to Fort Eustis, it was, of course, the first weekend we couldn't go home. My wife accompanied me here, and we had a little apartment down off of Denby Boulevard, Denby Street, I guess it was. And I got maybe one of the first weekends when I got to go home, when, of course, you had to come back by 5 or 6 o'clock on Sunday. And right after I got back, a lot of the guys ordered the pizza, and the pizza guy brought the pizza. The TOCS were laying in wait for us. And so we didn't. I'm not sure I was going to eat pizza anyway. I'd just come from home, but nobody got to eat the pizza, and they ran us all night long, all over Fort Eustis. And they made a couple of tactical blunders. They woke up everybody on Fort Eustis, you know, not only the NCOs, but the senior officers as well. So, and the next day we went to class, nobody could stay awake. So after that, the instructor says, "Why are you guys having such a hard problem staying awake today?" And when we told him the story, I think our TOCS got severely chastised. We never experienced that again during my time there.
So you came to Fort Eustis from Fort Knox?
That's correct. Yeah, I was in one of the first 4 classes that came here. We did a little over half the training at Fort Knox, and did the remainder here at Fort Eustis.
And tell me about how you were able to bring your wife with you.
Well, I was in France when I was selected to come to OCS, and my wife was with me. We'd been married about 4.5 months at that time, and when we came back, my wife was from Atlanta, and she was nearing her completion of her undergraduate degree, and so she went home to Atlanta. She did not accompany me to Fort Knox. She did come to Fort Knox to see me twice. My grandmother died near the end of that session, and I got to go home for 2 nights for that. But she finished the 1 quarter of school, and the plan was that she would come here with me. And so she lived here. Of course, they could come see us on Wednesday nights in the day room. And, you know, we had no kids because we just married, but a lot of the guys, you know, had 1 or 2 or 3 kids, so their wife would bring the kids. So we had this gang of people in the day room on, as I remember, Wednesday night for an hour and a half or 2 hours, okay?
Okay. So, do you have another story of something interesting that happened during
Well, you know, OCS was probably the most important thing that's happened in my life. And, you know, it gave me the chance to improve my life drastically. My dad was a sharecropper, okay, and I came from a very poor family. I entered the Army as an 8th grade dropout, and I was drafted at age 23, and during that 2 years I was serving as a draftee, they had a program where we went to school with regular teachers, taught the various high school subjects, and then we took the GED when we finished. And I took the GED, you pass the GED, I sent that information, I'm from the state of Georgia, to the state school superintendent, and then he provided you a document that says you've completed the requirement for high school graduation. Otherwise, I would not have been qualified for OCS. And then the other thing that happened to me, the Army allowed me to go to school full time to complete my undergraduate degree. I started taking college courses as soon as I got commissioned, and then not only did I get an undergraduate degree, I also got a graduate degree while I was serving in the Army. So, and I worked for a lot of great people in the Army. I had a great career. I was a transportation officer for 3 years for all the Army in Alaska, and then after that 3 years transportation officer at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and then I spent my last 4 years with a year out to Korea doing transportation planning for exercises, and so ended up having a fantastic career. And today I have a lot more financial assets, I think, than I would have ever had had I not. In fact, I got out of the Army after the 2 years, but I came back in the following year. So anyway, and I almost got out after Vietnam. My older son was 6 weeks old when I went to Vietnam, and when I returned, I says, I'm never doing that again. So, but in the end, I stayed in the Army for 26 years. So.
And what did you retire as?
I retired as a major.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do on your civilian side after?
After I retired, I worked for, near the end of my career, the Army got computers, and we bought our own computer in our home, and I had quite a bit of computer experience, and I worked for the Dillard's department stores. At that time, they were fairly small. They've expanded, I think, pretty much over the U.S. based on my computer experience. I did that for a while. I did that for 1 year, and then I took a job teaching school, and I taught school for 1 year and decided that was not my thing. So I left that, and I went back, worked for Dillard's for a while longer, and then I became employed by an IBM company. It was called Technology Service Solutions, and then we lived in Memphis, Tennessee. I worked there for about 4 years for IBM. They closed the place there, and they moved us, if we wanted to stay with IBM, we moved to Atlanta. They didn't disband the TSS company, but it was integrated into IBM. They had created this company because we were doing work for HP and companies like Gateway, and they didn't want when a person went to somebody's house or business to repair a computer, they didn't want him wearing an IBM tag. But shortly after we got to Atlanta, everything folded back into IBM, and I worked for IBM for a total of about 7 years, and I retired 2 months before I turned 65.
Okay.
And then we bought our first motor home, and we started traveling, and from 2003 to 2016 we traveled 90,000 plus miles in 2 different motor homes all over the U.S. Went to almost all the national parks in the U.S., and we had a lot of fun, and I don't think I would have been able to do that if I hadn't stayed in the Army as I did. So.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a
Will we be able to see these someday?